A widow hired a drifting hand to save her farm. Then he said he should leave before loving her. By the time the second storm cloud gathered over Blue Lantern Farm, Miriam Vale had already counted the same 12 silver coins 3 times, and still could not make them grow into the amount she needed. She stood at her kitchen table with the coins laid in neat little rows beside a chipped plate, while the late afternoon wind pressed dust against the window panes and made the loose shutter tap like impatient knuckles. Beyond the yard, the south side of the hay barn still looked wounded. 3 weeks earlier, a hard spring windstorm had torn boards free, lifted half the wagon shed roof, and flung a cottonwood limb straight through the outer wall as if the farm had been made of paper instead of pine and grit and years of work. Miriam had buried her husband, Ezra, in February. The storm had come in March, and by May she had learned what lonely people on the frontier learned sooner or later. Grief did not wait for a decent hour, and trouble never knocked only once. The farm belonged to her now in name, in labor, and in debt. 28 milk cows needed feeding whether she had slept or not. The chicken yard needed mending. The hay had to be cut before the heat turned it brittle. The south pasture fence leaned like an old man with no strength left in his knees. And every time she looked at the broken barn wall, she felt the same hard pinch low in her chest, because a farm could forgive sadness, but it never forgave delay. She swept the coins back into her palm and tied them into the corner of her apron. That was how she found herself in Mercy Crossing before noon the next day, standing in the blacksmith shop while sparks flashed bright against the dim interior. The air smelled of hot iron and horse sweat. Eli Mercer, the blacksmith, glanced up from a wagon rim he was shaping and studied her with the careful look of a man who knew when a person had come to ask for something difficult. "You need lumber hauled?" he asked. "I need a man who can do more than talk about work," Miriam said. "My barn wall is split, the wagon shed roof is near gone, and if I wait much longer, I'll lose more hay than I can spare." Eli set down his hammer. "I may know one." Miriam folded her arms. "That's so. He came through yesterday, calls himself Jonah Reed, says he can frame a wall, mend fencing, set hinges, and handle stock if needed. Quiet fellow. Keeps his word from what I can tell, looking for short work." "Short work usually means quick leaving." "It usually does," Eli agreed, "but it does not always mean poor work." Miriam looked past him toward the open street, where wagons rolled slowly through dust and sunlight. "And his price?" "Fair, lower than most if room and meals come with it." She hesitated only a moment. Pride had never milked a cow or saved a roof beam. "Where is he?" Eli jerked his chin toward the mercantile. "Likely they're buying nails one handful at a time." She found him outside, seated on the boardwalk edge with a paper parcel beside him and his hat tipped low against the sun. He rose when she stopped in front of him. He was taller than she expected, broad in the shoulders, with wind-browned skin and a stillness about him that did not look lazy so much as careful. His shirt sleeves were rolled, his boots dusted pale, and his eyes, when he lifted them to her face, were the kind that noticed more than they said. "Mr. Reed?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "Eli Mercer says you can repair a barn." "I can if the barn wants saving." The answer was so dry she nearly smiled, though she had not expected to. "Mine does." He picked up his parcel. "What sort of damage?" "South wall opened up. Wagon shed roof half torn away. Corral gate twisted. I expect once you arrive, you'll find 3 things I forgot to mention and 5 more I hope not to pay for." A faint change touched his mouth, not quite a smile, but close. "That sounds like most places." Miriam took a breath. "I can offer wages, though not grand ones, meals, and a room in the old tack room if you don't mind plain quarters." "Plain suits me fine." "You haven't asked the wage." "You haven't named it yet." There was no challenge in his tone, only patience, and somehow that made it easier to speak honestly. $1 a day, supper included and breakfast besides. If the work proves larger than I've said, we discuss it fair." Jonah nodded once, as if he respected her more for speaking plainly than for trying to impress him. "That will do." "Just like that. Just like that." She studied him, waiting for the usual haggling, the doubtful look, the hint that a woman alone on a farm must be desperate enough to pay whatever was demanded. None of it came. "When can you start?" she asked. He lifted his hat from the boardwalk rail. "Now, if you've a wagon headed home." They rode back to Blue Lantern Farm in a silence that did not feel awkward. Miriam held the reins while Jonah sat beside her, one hand braced against the seat as the wagon rattled over the road. Twice she caught him glancing toward the sky, measuring the wind. Once he asked how old the barn was. Once he asked whether the hay inside had stayed dry after the storm. They were sensible questions, useful questions. She found herself answering more than he asked. When they turned through the farm gate, Jonah did not waste time admiring the place or offering pity. He climbed down from the wagon, stood with hands on hips and looked over the torn wall, the lifted roofline, the scattered timber and the leaning corral post. "That beam will need replacing," he said. "2 roof braces as well. I can save the shed if we do it before the next rain. Barn wall first, gate later, no sense losing the hay." Miriam stared at him. "You settled all that in under a minute." "A farm tells on itself quick enough." He set down his parcel and moved toward the barn without waiting to be invited closer, not with rudeness, but with the calm assurance of a man already stepping into the work. He crouched to inspect the base of the broken wall, pressed one palm to a warped board, then glanced back toward her. "Have you got a lantern with good glass?" he asked. "If I start early tomorrow and keep at it late, I may want the light near sundown." For a moment she could not answer. In the barn, hanging from a peg just inside the side door, was the blue glass lantern Ezra had once lit every evening without fail. She had not touched it since winter. "Yes," she said at last, "I have one." Jonah nodded. "Good, I think we can save this place." No one had said that to her in months. Miriam stood very still in the yard, the wind tugging loose strands of hair from her pinned-up braid, while the stranger she had hired bent over her ruined barn as if saving broken things was the most ordinary work in the world. And for the first time since the storm, Blue Lantern Farm did not look only damaged to her. It looked possible. Jonah Reed began before sunrise. Miriam woke to the dull scrape of timber being dragged across the yard and lay still for one breath, listening. For months, every sound on Blue Lantern Farm had belonged to work waiting for her hands alone. The pump handle, the milk pails, the chicken yard gate, the wind worrying the loose boards of the barn as if it meant to take the rest of it down by patience. This sound was different. It was the sound of someone else carrying part of the weight. She dressed quickly, pinned her hair, and stepped into the kitchen to stir the coals back to life. Coffee went on first. Biscuits next. She sliced yesterday's ham thin and laid it in the skillet, then paused at the stove with one hand still on the iron handle. She had cooked for one person since February. The farm table, long and scarred from years of meals and accounts and seed sorting, looked almost startled to be set for 2. By the time Jonah came in, dust already marked his sleeves and fresh splinters clung to his cuffs. He stopped just inside the kitchen door as though unsure whether he ought to remove himself from the house before bringing half the yard in with him. "Wash basin S on the porch," Miriam said without turning. "Yes, ma'am. And if you call me ma'am every time you cross the threshold, I may charge you extra for board." That earned the faint, almost smile again. "Miriam, then." She heard the name in his voice and wished, foolishly, that it had not sounded so careful. They ate with the open politeness of strangers who had agreed to share a burden. Jonah did not talk unless spoken to, but he watched the window whenever the wind rose. Miriam noticed his hands first. They were scarred in small ways, the knuckles rough, one old cut pale across his thumb. He ate as a man accustomed to taking meals wherever they were given, wasting nothing, praising nothing too strongly, making no claim on the room. "You sleep all right in the tack room?" she asked. "Well enough." "That means no." It means the roof didn't leak and nothing bit me. That is a low standard for comfort. I've had lower. She looked at him over her coffee. That's supposed to make me feel better. No, he said, only honest. After breakfast, the real work began. Jonah first cleared the broken boards from the barn's south side, sorting what could be saved from what had gone soft with weather. Miriam expected him to ask for help only when the lifting grew heavy, but he seemed to know where her strength fit without making a speech of it. He handed her lighter planks, asked her to hold a brace steady, and stepped in only when a beam shifted dangerously. He did not treat her like glass. That alone made her trust him half an inch more. By mid-morning, the sun had climbed high, and the yard smelled of cut pine, dust, and old hay. Miriam had chores of her own, but she kept finding reasons to pass the barn. A bucket that needed moving, a rope she had forgotten, a hen that had wandered too close to the work. Each time, Jonah was exactly where he should be, measuring, sawing, fitting wood into the wounded side of the building, with a patience that made the damage look less final. Near noon, she found him standing inside the barn with one hand pressed against the remaining wall frame. "You find more trouble?" she asked. "Some." "How much is some?" He glanced at her, the kind a person mentions after dinner if he wants the meal first. Miriam narrowed her eyes. "Say it now." "The corner post is weaker than it looked. Storm twisted it near the base. If I build against it as it stands, the wall may hold through summer and fail come winter. And if you replace it, it holds. How much more?" He named the lumber, then the cost, and she felt each word settle like stones in her apron pocket. She turned toward the open yard, where the cows moved slowly beyond the fence, and the broken wagon shed waited its turn. A lesser man might have softened the truth or made the choice for her. Jonah only stood quietly and let her think. "I have 2 spare posts behind the old smokehouse," she said at last. "Ezra bought them 3 years ago and never used them." Jonah nodded. "If they're sound, they'll do." She almost thanked him for not saying her husband's name awkwardly. Most people lowered their voices around grief, as if speaking too plainly might wake it. Jonah only picked up his hammer and went with her to see the posts. The afternoon turned hot. Miriam milked, fed, swept, hauled water, and came back to the barn near sundown with the blue glass lantern in one hand. She had almost taken the plain tin lantern from the pantry instead. It would have served better. Clear glass threw a cleaner light, and the blue one had always been more sentiment than sense. Ezra had bought it from a peddler in their first year of marriage, claiming every farm deserved one pretty useless thing. She had not lit it since the night before he died. Now she carried it carefully, as if the glass might remember too much. Jonah was on a ladder, one shoulder braced against the new corner post, fitting a crossbeam into place. He looked down when the light touched the boards. "That's fine glass," he said. "It is not practical glass. Most fine things are." Miriam set it on an overturned crate and struck a match. The wick caught slowly, then steadied into a small blue-edged glow. The light changed the barn around them. The raw pine shone pale. The dust drifted like smoke. Jonah's face, half-shadowed beneath the brim of his hat, looked less like a stranger's and more like something the farm had been waiting to show her once she was ready. She cleared her throat. "You said you might need light." "I did." "Then don't fall." "I'll make an effort." She should have gone back to the house. Supper needed warming. The milk needed straining. The accounts ledger lay open on the table, waiting for sums that would not improve by being ignored. Instead, she stayed. Not close, not uselessly. She held boards when he asked, passed nails, shifted the lantern when his shadow fell wrong. Neither of them spoke much. Their silence felt different from the one at breakfast. It had work in it. Trust, too, though small and new as a seed barely under soil. When the beam finally settled into place, Jonah drove the last nail with 3 clean strikes and leaned back to inspect it. "There," he said, "that corner won't complain again." "Good," Miriam said. "I've had enough complaining from buildings." He climbed down and stood beside her in the lantern glow. For a moment they both looked at the repaired frame, not whole yet, but stronger than it had been that morning. "You do careful work," she said. "My father used to say a man ought to fix things like someone he loves will have to stand beneath them." The words came quietly, and after saying them, Jonah seemed to regret how much they gave away. Miriam looked at the beam again. "That is a good rule." It was. The past tense sat between them, plain and heavy. She did not press him. He had not pressed her when Ezra's name came up. Some grief asked to be handled like a sharp tool, respectfully and only when needed. By the time they walked back toward the house, full dark had settled across Blue Lantern Farm. Miriam carried the lantern. Jonah carried the hammer and the last short length of pine. At the kitchen door, he stopped and brushed dust from his sleeves. "I can eat outside," he said. "I'm filthy." "You can wash outside and eat at the table," she answered. "I did not cook stew for the porch." He looked at her then, and the almost smile became real enough to see. After supper, she found him in the yard instead of the tack room. He had taken a bent hinge from the chicken yard gate and was working it straight by moonlight. "That hinge was not part of the barn," she said from the porch. "No. Nor the wagon shed. No. Nor anything I hired you for today." Jonah held the hinge up, judged it, then bent it a little farther. It squealed. "It has squealed for 4 years. Then it's overdue." Miriam leaned one shoulder against the porch post and felt a small, unexpected warmth move through her chest. The farm was still damaged. Her money was still thin. The future was still waiting like a hard road with no shade. But the barn corner stood firm in the dark. The blue lantern had been lit again, and a quiet hired hand was fixing a hinge nobody had asked him to touch. For the first time in months, Miriam went to bed with the sound of repair still moving gently through the yard. By the end of Jonah Reed's first week at Blue Lantern Farm, the barn no longer groaned in the wind. It was not healed, not yet. The south wall still showed patches of fresh lumber where old pine had weathered gray. The wagon shed still sagged on one side. The corral gate still needed more prayer than hinge to keep it shut. But the barn had stopped sounding like a thing about to give up. Miriam noticed that before she noticed anything else. She noticed, too, that Jonah worked as if time had teeth. He rose before the cows stirred, crossed the yard with his coat slung over one shoulder, and started measuring boards while the sky was still the color of cooled ash. He did not waste nails. He did not leave tools scattered. He never leaned on a shovel when there was work near enough to touch. More than once, Miriam stepped into the yard carrying coffee and found some small trouble already solved. A loose step nailed down. A cracked water trough braced with scrap wood. A length of rope coiled properly instead of left in the dust where she had dropped it the night before. On Thursday morning, she found the chicken yard gate swinging without its usual shriek. She stood there with the feed pail in one hand and stared at it. Jonah came around the corner of the barn, with a plank balanced on his shoulder. "You fixed it again," she said. He stopped. It was still catching. It was not catching, it was speaking. Gates aren't meant to speak. That gate has spoken faithfully since before you were hired. Then it was tired. Miriam tried to frown and failed. "You have strong opinions for a man who says little." "I save them for hinges." The hens clucked around her skirt as if agreeing with him, and Miriam had to turn away before he saw too much amusement on her face. That same afternoon, she drove into Mercy Crossing for flour, lamp oil, and the nails Jonah had calculated down to the pound. He came along because she needed help loading lumber from the freight shed, though he seemed uneasy the closer they came to town. Not nervous. Jonah did not strike her as a man easily rattled. But there was a certain tightness in him, a checking of his coat pocket, a quiet counting beneath his breath. At the mercantile, he carried sacks without complaint. At the lumber stack, he rejected 3 warped boards and selected straighter ones from the bottom, while the freight clerk muttered about extra labor. At the blacksmith's, Eli Mercer asked after the barn and grinned when Miriam admitted it might stand after all. Told you he was useful, Eli said. I never doubted useful, Miriam replied. I doubted affordable. Jonah, who was tying the lumber down, looked up. I'm still within the agreed wage. For now, she said. For now, he echoed, and there was a dryness in it that made Eli chuckle. Before they left town, Jonah paused outside the stage office. It was a narrow building between the post room and a saddler's shop, with a faded sign promising letters, parcels, bank drafts, and passage west if a person had money enough to leave where he was. Jonah set one hand briefly against his coat pocket again. I need a minute, he said. Miriam nodded. I'll wait by the wagon. She did not mean to watch him. Watching felt like trespass. But from where she stood, she could see through the open doorway as Jonah removed a folded paper from inside his coat and laid coins on the counter in careful stacks. The stage agent, old Mr. Bell, took the money without asking many questions, as if he had seen Jonah do the same thing before in some other town, or as if the act itself was common enough to require no story. Jonah counted once, then again. The agent wrote out a draft, sanded the ink, folded the paper, and passed him a receipt. Jonah tucked that receipt away with more care than most men gave to photographs. When he came out, his face had settled back into its usual quiet. Miriam climbed onto the wagon seat. Everything all right? Yes. She waited until he had taken his place beside her and the team had started down the street. You send money somewhere. His hand stilled on the wagon rail. She regretted the question at once. You needn't answer. No, he said after a moment. It's fair enough. My mother and younger brother are in Missouri, outside a little town called Fair Hollow. I send what I can when I can. Through the stage office. Bank draft when there's an agent to write one. Money order when there's a post office close. Cash by trusted freight once, though I never slept right until word came it arrived. The wagon wheels bumped over the rutted edge of town. Miriam looked ahead, giving him the mercy of not being stared at while he spoke. Your brother is young, she asked. 15, name's Amos, wants to apprentice with a printer. Says he'd rather set type than follow a plow the rest of his life. There was pride in Jonah's voice, though he tried to hide it under plain words. And your mother's? Widowed, tired, stubborn. She keeps a garden, 2 cows, and more dignity than is useful when a person needs help. That sounds like a mother. It does. Miriam guided the team around a washout in the road. Is that why you take short work? Jonah was quiet long enough that she thought he might let the question die between them. Then he said short work pays faster, hard jobs pay better, a man who moves can follow both. And what does moving cost? He looked toward the low hills, where the evening light had begun to gather gold along the brush. Not much if he learns not to count it. The answer touched something in her she had not meant to uncover. She thought of her own kitchen table, too large for one. Of Ezra's coat still hanging on the peg in the back room because she had not yet decided what a widow was supposed to do with emptiness shaped like a man. Of the blue lantern, lit again only because a hired hand had needed light. Some costs wait, she said quietly. They don't vanish because a person refuses the arithmetic. Jonah turned his head toward her, but she kept her eyes on the road. For the rest of the ride home, neither spoke. That evening, Miriam made beans with salt pork and cornbread browned at the edges the way her mother had taught her. Jonah came in late, washed at the porch basin, and sat at the table only after she told him twice that the food would not improve by waiting on his manners. He ate steadily, but his thoughts seemed elsewhere. Amos, Miriam said, setting the coffee pot down between them. Your brother, does he write to you? When he has paper to spare. What does he write about? Type cases, ink, a newspaper editor he admires, complaints about our mother's rooster. Once he sent me a whole paragraph about the glory of punctuation marks. That did make her smile. A boy with dreams that particular deserves an apprenticeship. Jonah looked into his cup. That's what I figure. Then it is good work what you're doing. He did not answer at once. Some days it feels like good work. Some days it feels like I'm always arriving only long enough to leave again. Miriam heard the truth beneath it and chose not to press too hard. Blue Lantern has plenty broken enough to keep you arriving for a while. His eyes lifted to hers. The warmth that passed between them was brief, but it stayed in the room after they both looked away. After supper, Jonah insisted on checking the new braces before the wind rose. Miriam told herself she brought the Blue Lantern because it was practical. The sky had gone dark. The barn had sharp edges. A man could not work safely by moonlight alone. Still, she polished the glass with her apron before carrying it out. Jonah stood in the barn's open side, one hand resting on the new beam. "Storm's shifting north," he said. "You can read that. Enough to know it won't hit hard tonight. That is a comfort. It may rain by morning. That is less comfort." He took the lantern from her and hung it on a nail where the blue light reached the fresh boards. For a while, they stood beneath the repaired corner and listened to the first low stir of weather beyond the fields. "I used to hate this lantern," Miriam said before she could stop herself. Jonah did not move. Why? It was too pretty for a place that always needed practical things. Ezra bought it from a peddler, said a farm deserved beauty that had no chore attached to it. She swallowed. After he died, it seemed foolish hanging there, like it had forgotten the house had gone quiet. Jonah looked at the lantern, not at her. Maybe it was waiting to be useful in a different way. The words were simple, too simple perhaps for how they caught in her chest. Outside, the wind moved over the farm in a long, low breath. Inside, the Blue Lantern burned steady, shining over new wood where broken boards had been. If you believe some people show love by fixing what is broken, stay with this story, because Blue Lantern Farm had only begun to reveal what two lonely hearts might mend together. Miriam reached for the lantern handle at the same moment Jonah did. Their fingers touched, only lightly, only for a second. Neither of them pulled away as quickly as they should have. The rain came before dawn, soft at first, then hard enough to make the whole roof speak. Miriam woke in the gray dark and sat up at once, listening for the old sounds of trouble. The rush of water through a broken seam, the slap of loosened boards, the low, sick groan of a wall deciding whether to hold one more hour or give up entirely. Instead, she heard rain striking good timber. For a moment, she did not move. Then she rose, pulled on her shawl, and crossed the cold kitchen floor to the back window. Beyond the glass, Blue Lantern Farm lay blurred under sheets of rain. The yard had gone to mud. The cows huddled beneath the shed line. The repaired south side of the barn stood dark and square, taking the weather like it had every right to survive. Miriam pressed one hand to the window frame. She had expected relief to feel lighter. Instead, it hurt. Maybe because she had become so used to holding herself braced for loss that the sight of something standing firm nearly undid her. There had been too many mornings since February when she had woken with the same thought waiting beside her. What else will be gone by sundown? The barn was not gone. The man in the tack room had seen to that. By breakfast, the rain had slowed to a mist. Jonah came in with damp hair, boots thick with mud, and a strip of oilcloth folded under one arm. "You went out already?" Miriam asked. "Check the wall. And dry inside." She turned too quickly toward the stove, busying her hands with coffee so he would not see how much that answer mattered. "Good. Wagon shed took water near the west corner. That shed has taken water since I married into this place. Then it has had a poor upbringing." She looked over her shoulder. Jonah's expression was plain as fence wire, but there was a quiet glint in his eye. "You are beginning to sound attached to my buildings," she said. "Only the ones that complain." "They all complain." "Then I'll be busy." They ate while the rain tapped gently overhead. Jonah's shirt steamed faintly near the stove. Miriam noticed that he had patched a tear in his sleeve with careful, uneven stitches. Not fine work, but sturdy. A man who repaired his own clothes because buying new ones meant sending less money elsewhere. After breakfast, the yard was too wet for heavy hauling, so Miriam turned to the accounts. She sat at the kitchen table with the ledger open, a pencil in hand, and Jonah worked outside beneath the wagon shed eave, cutting away a warped section of roof slat that had trapped water. Through the window, she saw him measure twice before every cut. Numbers did not improve under staring. Miriam had 3 bills due by the end of the month: feed, lumber, a small note at the mercantile left from the winter when Ezra's fever had kept them buying broth, medicine, and lamp oil in a blur of sleepless nights. The dairy brought in money, but not enough if the shed repairs grew larger. The hay might save her if she got it cut on time. The cows might save her if sickness stayed away. The weather might save her if it behaved better than weather usually did. Too many mites made poor company. She closed the ledger and opened the bottom kitchen drawer for sealing wax. Her fingers brushed paper instead. The map. She froze. It lay folded beneath a flour sack, tucked where nobody would look unless they had spent years hiding from their own wanting. Miriam drew it out slowly and set it on the table. The paper had softened along the creases. Town names marked in faded pencil crossed the territory and beyond: Santa Fe, Las Vegas, Tucson, Denver. Places she had once spoken of with careless hope before marriage, before illness, before the farm narrowed itself around chores and loss. Ezra had known about the map. He had never mocked it, but neither had life made room for it. There had always been a cow ready to calve, a fence down, a note due, winter feed to buy, butter to churn, accounts to stretch. She traced a pencil mark near Santa Fe and felt ashamed of the small ache it woke in her. A widow with a broken shed had no business dreaming of roads. A knock sounded at the open kitchen door. Miriam folded the map too quickly. Jonah stood on the threshold holding a bent length of tin. His eyes moved from her face to the paper beneath her hand, then away again with more courtesy than most men could manage. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said. "You didn't." Which was untrue, but only partly. "I need to ask whether you want the wagon shed patched plain or altered while I'm at it." "Altered how?" He stepped inside only after she nodded. Rain dripped from the brim of his hat onto the floorboards. "Roof pitch is wrong. That's why it keeps taking water. I can patch it as it stands, cheaper now, dearer later. Or I can raise the west side and give it enough slope to shed rain proper." Miriam rubbed her thumb along the map's folded edge. "How much more lumber?" "Less than you fear, more than you'd like." "That is not a number." "No, but it is honest." Despite herself, she smiled. "You and your careful truths. They save time. They cost peace. Only the false kind." That quiet answer settled between them. Miriam looked down at the ledger, then at the map, then through the window toward the wagon shed where rain still slipped from the poor old roof in crooked streams. "What would you do?" she asked. Jonah seemed surprised. "It's your place." "I know whose place it is. I asked what you would do." He removed his hat. "I'd fix it right while it's open. A bad patch is just a dent nailed to a roof." Miriam let out a slow breath, then raised the west side. "You're sure?" "No, but I am tired of paying twice for fear." He nodded, and something like respect moved across his face. Not soft admiration, not flattery, the steadier kind a working person gives another when a hard choice is made square. As he turned to leave, his gaze fell once more toward the folded map. "You've been somewhere." The question was gentle enough that she could have refused it without harm. Instead, she opened the map. "No," she said, "that is the trouble with it." Jonah remained near the door, careful not to come closer until she invited the conversation to grow. Miriam spread the paper between the ledger and the coffee cups. The old pencil marks looked foolish in the morning light, like a girl's secrets trespassing on a widow's table. "I used to mark places I wanted to see," she said. "Back before I understood wanting did not hitch a team or pay a note." Jonah looked at the names without touching the paper. "Santa Fe." I hear the streets look golden near sunset." "They do." Her eyes lifted. "You've seen it." "Passed through once, stayed 3 days to repair a livery roof." "What was it like?" He leaned one shoulder against the doorframe and seemed to search for the truest answer. "Dusty, loud, more bells than I cared for, good bread near the plaza. Sky looked bigger there somehow, though I can't explain that." Miriam looked back at the penciled name. She could almost see it, not as a fancy dream, but as a place with dust and bread and too many bells. "That sounds fine," she said. "It was. Did you ever want to stay?" Jonah's face closed a little, not coldly, but like a man shutting a gate against livestock that might wander too far. "Wanting to stay has never been useful to me." "And you dislike useless things." "I can't afford many." Her hand rested on the map. Ezra used to say every farm needed one pretty useless thing. That was why he bought the blue lantern. Jonah glanced toward the barn where the lantern now hung, cleaned and ready. Maybe he was right. "Maybe," her voice softened before she could stop it. "I put it away after he died because it seemed cruel for something beautiful to keep shining when he could not see it." Jonah said nothing for a long moment. Then he spoke with such plain kindness that it nearly hurt worse than pity. "A light does not stop belonging to a house because one person is gone." Miriam looked down quickly, blinking once. She had been pitied in town, advised by older women, gently corrected by men who thought grief could be managed with enough chores. Jonah did none of that. He simply left the truth where she could pick it up if she wished. Outside, the rain thinned to silver threads. Jonah put his hat back on. "I'll start on the shed." "Jonah." He paused. "Thank you for not laughing at the map." His brow drew faintly. "Why would I laugh?" "Because it is old. Because I am here. Because there are notes due and boards split and cows waiting. Because some dreams look childish once a person has buried enough of life." Jonah looked at her then, as if she had said something badly mistaken. "Miriam," he said, "a dream kept folded is not the same as a dream lost." Then he went back into the wet yard, leaving muddy tracks on the porch and a sentence behind him that would not leave her alone. That evening, after the chores were done and the wagon shed stood half open for proper repair, Miriam placed the old map back in the drawer. But she did not bury it beneath the flour sack. She laid it on top. And when Jonah came late to supper with rain in his hair and pine dust on his sleeves, she had his plate warming by the stove, though she told herself it was only because stew tasted poor when served cold. He noticed. He said nothing. But after supper, before going out to check the shed braces, he repaired the loose pull on the bottom kitchen drawer, the one that held the map. Miriam watched from the table as his hands worked carefully over the small brass handle. "That drawer was not broken," she said. Jonah did not look up. "It stuck. It was supposed to. Things don't have to keep sticking just because they always have." The words were about the drawer. Miriam knew they were about more. When he finished, the drawer slid smooth and quiet beneath his hand. He stepped back, satisfied, and Miriam felt a strange tenderness for that small repair, as if he had fixed a road inside her she had forgotten how to travel. Outside, the last rainwater dripped from the eaves. Inside, the old map waited in a drawer that now opened without a fight. The wagon shed took 3 days longer than Jonah had first promised. Miriam pretended not to notice that he blamed the roof pitch, the warped crosspiece, the rain-softened corner board, and one stubborn brace that had apparently offended him on principle. She also pretended not to notice that the longer the work stretched, the easier it became to set 2 cups beside the coffee pot without thinking. By the middle of June, Blue Lantern Farm had begun to sound different. The hammer blows no longer startled the cows. The hens had stopped scattering every time Jonah crossed the yard. The repaired chicken yard gate swung so silently now that Miriam still found herself pausing to listen for the old squeal. Even the barn seemed to stand prouder, its new south wall catching the morning light in clean bands of pale pine. Jonah moved through the place like a man trying not to belong to it. That was the part Miriam noticed most. He never left his coat on a chair, never put his hat anywhere but the same nail by the tack room door, never spoke of what should be done after the agreed work was finished unless she asked him directly. His bedroll stayed tied at one end, as if a man could fool himself into thinking departure remained easy by keeping one not ready. But he fixed things like he planned to see them last. On Wednesday evening, Miriam came out of the dairy room with sleeves rolled to her elbows and found him studying the old wagon shed with one hand on his hip. "That look means money," she said. Jonah glanced back, "Not necessarily. That look has never once meant free improvement. It might mean future trouble avoided, which is money dressed in Sunday clothes." He looked almost amused. "You have a suspicious nature." "I have an accounts ledger." He pointed toward the shed's open side. "This place could do more than keep one wagon dry. It can barely keep one wagon dry now. When I finish, it could hold 2 stalls along the back, maybe 3 if the partition's done right. You've pasture enough for boarders when hay runs strong. Mercy Crossing has no proper stable except Bell's stage barn, and he keeps it full of freight teams." Miriam wiped her hands on her apron and stared at the shed. "You are suggesting I board horses." "I am suggesting the building wants better use than holding broken harness and one wagon with a cracked wheel. That wagon belonged to Ezra's father. That does not make the wheel less cracked." She gave him a look. "You speak boldly to a woman who signs your wages." "I speak carefully to a farm that could earn more than it does." The answer stopped her. Not because it was impertinent, but because it was true. Miriam had spent so many months thinking only of keeping Blue Lantern from failing that she had nearly forgotten a place could become more than what grief had left behind. She looked at the shed again, seeing not the sagging thing it had been, but the shape Jonah seemed to see already. Stalls, fresh rails, tack hooks, horses in from town, a reason for men to bring business up her lane. "You have thought about this," she said. "Some." "How much is some?" "Enough to know it is not foolish." She crossed her arms. "It would take lumber." "Yes." "Time." "Yes." "More feed." "Some." "More labor." His eyes met hers. "Yes." There it was, not a proposal, not yet, not even a request, but the word hung between them with more meaning than its size deserved. More labor. More time. More reason for Jonah Reed to remain at Blue Lantern Farm after the barn and shed stopped needing him. Miriam looked away first. "The cows come before boarders, dairy money is steady." "I know. And I will not risk winter feed on a dream with poor legs." "You shouldn't. And Bell may not like competition." "Bell likes money. You could board overflow teams when his barn fills. He'd rather send them here than turn them away." She narrowed her eyes. "You have spoken to him." "I asked a question." "You asked a question about my farm." Jonah removed his hat slowly. "About the town's need for stalls, not your farm." "That is a thin difference." "It is the truth." Miriam should have been angrier than she was. A man hired to fix storm damage had no right walking into town and measuring the shape of her future against the needs of the stage office. Yet the anger would not rise properly, because beneath his presumption was respect. He had not told Belle she would do it. He had not made promises in her name. He had only looked at her broken shed and seen income where she had seen repair. Still, pride had its own temper. "You are not the first man to decide what a widow ought to do with her land," she said. His face changed at once. The faint warmth left it. "No," he said quietly, "I expect I'm not." The words were not defensive, which somehow made them harder to hear. Miriam felt shame prick her before she could call it back. Jonah had never spoken to her like town men who softened their voices and tried to manage her grief into obedience. He had never reached for the reins when she drove, never took a tool from her hand unless the weight truly needed two people. He had made one suggestion, a bold one perhaps, but not a cruel one. "I did not mean it that way," she said. He nodded, all right. But the ease had gone. They worked apart the rest of the evening. Jonah measured boards beneath the shed roof. Miriam strained milk in the dairy room harder than the task required. Twice she looked through the open door and saw him there, steady and quiet, not sulking, not punishing her, just putting distance back where familiarity had gotten too comfortable. At supper he washed and came in as always, but the table felt larger again. Miriam served beans, fried potatoes, and fresh bread. Jonah thanked her. He ate. She poured coffee. Neither reached for the small conversation that had begun to make evenings less hollow. At last, Miriam set down her fork. "My father used to say I could make a plan out of fence wire and bad weather," she said. Jonah looked up. "He meant it as praise when I was young and trouble when I got older." A little of the guardedness eased from his eyes, though not all. "Sounds like a wise man." He was, except when he was stubborn, which was most days ending in Y. She drew a breath. "I have spent this spring feeling as if every choice left to me was between losing slowly and losing quickly. When you spoke of stalls, I heard another man telling me what to do. That was not fair." Jonah's hand rested beside his cup. "I should have asked before thinking aloud." "You did ask." "Not soon enough." The plain apology warmed her more than argument would have. She looked toward the dark window, where the barn stood unseen beyond their own reflection. "Tell me the plan again," she said. His gaze sharpened slightly. "Now. Before I lose courage." So Jonah told her. Not like a dreamer, like a man measuring boards. 2 stalls first, not 3, no more than the shed could hold without crowding, a new rail along the back. The cracked wagon pushed to the lean-to until they decided whether to repair or sell it, fresh hooks for harness. A small paddock fence tied into the existing corral, board 1 horse at first, perhaps 2 when hay allowed. No grand promises, no foolish debt. Miriam listened with her elbows on the table, and the ledger opened between them. For the first time in months, the numbers did not look only like a sentence passed against her. They looked like a road. Later, after supper, Jonah went back to the shed to cover the open side before night damp crept in. Miriam followed with the blue lantern. She did not say it was practical this time, though it was. She only held it high enough for him to see the nail heads clearly. Wind moved through the yard, carrying the smell of wet earth and milk cows and fresh-cut pine. Jonah worked in silence for a while, then spoke without looking down from the ladder. "My father died when I was 19, he said. Miriam stilled. He was cutting timber on another man's land. Tree kicked wrong. Took him fast, they said. Left my mother with a tired little farm and Amos with ink dreams he had no money to chase. I took the first paying work I could find. Been taking the next one ever since." The lantern flame trembled in Miriam's hand. "You send money so Amos can apprentice," she said. "And so my mother can keep the place. She says she does not need much, which generally means she needs more than she says." Miriam understood that kind of pride too well. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Your home?" Jonah climbed down, took a nail from between his teeth, and set it carefully in his palm. "I miss the idea of it. I have been gone long enough that when I return I feel like company." The sadness of that was so quiet it nearly passed as fact. Miriam looked at him in the blue lantern glow. "That is a hard thing." "It is an ordinary thing." "No," she said, "it is only common. That does not make it ordinary." He looked at her then, and something unguarded moved between them, brief as a match strike. A gust of wind pushed through the open shed. Miriam stepped closer to shield the lantern flame. Jonah reached at the same moment, his hand closing around the frame above hers to steady it. Their fingers did not touch this time, but his hand was near enough that she felt the warmth of him. Neither moved away. For several breaths, the whole farm seemed to listen. Then a cow bawled from the pasture, loud and offended, and Miriam startled so badly the lantern jerked in her grasp. Jonah caught it before it swung into the ladder. The solemn moment broke. Miriam laughed first, one hand pressed to her mouth as if the sound had escaped without permission. Jonah looked toward the pasture, then back at her. "That cow has poor timing," he said. "She has excellent timing. I was about to say something unwise." His eyes held hers. "Were you?" She felt heat rise in her face and turned quickly toward the house. "Good night, Mr. Reed." "Miriam." She stopped but did not look back. "The shed plan can wait," he said. "No need deciding tonight." "I know." But as she crossed the yard with the blue lantern lighting her path, Miriam knew something had already been decided, even if neither of them had found the courage to name it. Jonah Reed was not only repairing her farm anymore. He was making it harder to imagine the place without him. By late June, the wagon shed had stopped looking like a patched wound and started looking like a promise. Jonah had raised the west side, replaced the rain-soft boards, and set a clean slant to the roof so water ran off in silver lines whenever afternoon storms passed over Blue Lantern Farm. He built 2 stalls along the back, not fancy, not wasteful, but solid enough to hold a restless horse without complaint. He fashioned tack hooks from scrap iron Eli Mercer had let him buy cheap, and Miriam painted the stall rails with whitewash until they shone pale in the dusty light. She told herself it was only good sense. A farm woman could not afford to ignore extra income. If Mercy Crossing needed overflow stalls from the stage office, then Blue Lantern could provide them. If hay prices shifted poor come fall, board money might steady the accounts. If Jonah happened to be the man who had seen the possibility first, that did not make the plan sentimental. Still, each new board made him harder to call temporary. On the last Friday of June, Mr. Bell from the stage office brought up the first horse for boarding, a chestnut mare with one white stocking and a habit of looking offended by everything. "She bites?" Miriam asked, standing at the shed entrance with both hands on her hips. "Only men she dislikes," Mr. Bell said. Jonah took the mare's lead rope. "Then she has judgment." Mr. Bell laughed so hard his round belly shook. "Keep her 3 nights. Freight team coming through Sunday and my barn is full to the rafters. If this works, Mrs. Vale, I'll send more your way when I'm crowded." Miriam accepted the coins he gave her and placed them in her apron pocket with more care than their amount required. The sound of them was small, but it was not the sound of surviving. It was the sound of beginning. After Mr. Bell left, she stood outside the shed and watched Jonah settle the mare. He moved calmly, speaking low, one hand on the horse's neck, the other guiding the rope without force. The mare stamped once, then blew out a breath and allowed herself to be led into the fresh stall. "You have a way with horses," Miriam said. Jonah latched the rail. Horses like a man better when he doesn't feel the need to prove he's stronger than they are. "And people." He glanced at her. "Some people too." She knew better than to ask if he meant her. That evening, Miriam opened the ledger and wrote the first boarding payment in a new column. She hesitated at the top of the page, then wrote, in careful letters, "Stable income." The words looked bold. Too bold, perhaps. She stared at them until Jonah came in from checking the mare and stopped behind the chair. "That the new column?" he asked. "Yes." "You wrote it neat." "I write all my accounts neat." "You pressed harder on that one." She closed the ledger. "Do you inspect handwriting as well as hinges?" "Only when it tells on a person." "My handwriting tells you nothing." "It tells me you liked writing those words." Miriam looked down at the closed book and after a moment let the truth sit plain between them. "I did." He nodded, not with triumph but with quiet satisfaction. "Good." They ate supper while the evening cooled around the house. The air held the smell of beans, coffee, lamp oil, and fresh whitewash. Jonah seemed more tired than usual but not unhappy. Miriam noticed him rubbing at the back of his hand where a splinter had gone deep earlier. She fetched a needle, a clean cloth, and a small bottle of carbolic from the pantry. "Give me your hand," she said. "It's nothing. It is a splinter. I've had worse. That does not remove this one." He gave her his hand reluctantly, palm up. His fingers were long, rough, and scarred with old work. Miriam sat close enough to see the grain of sawdust caught along his cuff. She bent over the splinter, working the needle with care. Jonah did not flinch, though once his jaw tightened. "Pain?" she asked. "Pride. That is harder to treat. Most folks leave it alone until it kills a man." She glanced up. His eyes were on her face, closer than they had any right to be across a kitchen table. Miriam looked back down too quickly and drew the splinter free. "There, you may survive." "I'm grateful." "You do not sound grateful." "I am quietly grateful." "That seems to be your preferred manner of feeling most things." A faint smile touched him. "It keeps a man out of trouble." "Does it?" He did not answer. The silence changed shape. Outside, the chestnut mare thumped once against her stall. Inside, Miriam wrapped Jonah's hand with a strip of cloth, her fingers moving slower than the task required. When she tied the knot, his thumb brushed lightly over her wrist, perhaps by accident, perhaps not. She did not pull away. Then he did. "I should check the mare once more," he said, rising. "That mare has been checked more carefully than a church roof before a wedding. She's new to the place. So are you." His hand stilled on the back of the chair. The words had come out softer than she intended. They left no easy answer. Jonah looked toward the window, where the yard had gone purple with dusk. "I don't stay new long," he said. Miriam felt the small hope in her chest step back. "No, I suppose not." He looked at her then, and something in his face suggested he regretted the truth even as he stood by it. The next morning, Jonah asked for half a day in town. Miriam did not ask why. She already knew the look of a man preparing to send money. He wore the same coat he had worn to the stage office before, and his hand checked the inside pocket twice while he harnessed the team. "I can drive myself," he said. "I need flour and salt," Miriam replied. They rode together under a clean sky. Mercy Crossing bustled with the end-of-month restlessness of men paying bills, buying supplies, and pretending both cost less than they did. Jonah loaded feed from the mercantile, carried flour without being asked, and then crossed to the stage office with his shoulders set in that careful way Miriam had begun to recognize. This time, she did not watch from the wagon. She went inside. Not close enough to intrude, not far enough to pretend ignorance. She stood near the notice board while Jonah counted his wages into stacks on Mr. Bell's counter. The coins were fewer than before, she noticed, not because he had earned less, but because some of his money had gone into posts, nails, and small improvements he had insisted were part of doing the job right. Mr. Bell wrote the draft. Jonah gave the name quietly, Mrs. Ruth Reed, Fair Hollow, Missouri. "And the message?" Mr. Bell asked. Jonah hesitated. "Same as always for Amos's apprenticeship fund, tell Ma I'm well." Miriam looked at the notice board, though she saw none of the papers pinned there. "Tell Ma I'm well." 3 words to stand in for loneliness, worn boots, strange beds, and a man who worked past dark so a boy in Missouri might set type instead of break his back behind a plow. When Jonah finished, he found her outside beside the wagon. "You heard," he said. "Yes." He looked away down the street. "I don't usually like folks knowing my business." "I know. But you stayed." "I did." "Why?" Miriam took a moment before answering. Because a person should not always have to send proof of love alone. Jonah's face changed, only slightly but enough. Before he could answer, Mr. Bell came out waving a folded paper. "Read, almost forgot, letter came on yesterday's eastbound." Jonah took it, and the sight of his name written in a careful hand made him go still. "From home?" Miriam asked when they had climbed back into the wagon. My mother. He did not open it right away. He held it during the whole ride back, thumb resting on the folded edge. Miriam kept her questions behind her teeth. Some letters needed a quiet room, not a wagon road. At Blue Lantern, Jonah carried the feed sacks to the shed, checked the mare, then disappeared behind the tack room. Miriam gave him time. She washed jars, skimmed cream, turned the boarding coins in her apron pocket once, then placed them in the ledger drawer beside the map. Near sunset, she found Jonah seated on the back step of the tack room, the letter open in his hands. She says Amos got taken on part-time at the printer's shop, he said before she asked. Not full apprentice yet, but close. That is good news. Yes. He smiled then, small and real, and Miriam saw the boy he must have been before duty had made him careful. She also says he corrected the church bulletin and offended half the congregation. Miriam laughed, then he will make a fine printer. Jonah looked down at the letter, his thumb moving over his mother's handwriting. Ma says she is proud, says I must not work myself into an early grave for people who would rather see me living than only useful. The words landed quietly. Miriam sat beside him, leaving a careful space between their shoulders. She sounds wise. She sounds like she knows me. Both can be true. The sun dropped behind the barn, turning the new boards gold. The blue lantern hung unlit inside, waiting for night. Jonah folded the letter along its softened crease. I don't know what to do with that kind of permission. What kind? The kind that says I may want something, and not be a thief for wanting it. Miriam did not trust herself to answer quickly. So she looked toward the shed, where the chestnut mare lowered her head over the new rail, calm in a place that had not held horses a week before. She looked at the barn wall, standing firm. She looked at Jonah's hand, bandaged in cloth she had tied there herself. At Blue Lantern, she said softly, we are learning not to pay twice for fear. He turned his head toward her. For a moment, the distance between their shoulders seemed very small. Then the mare gave a loud snort from the shed, and Jonah looked down with the faintest smile. If this lantern-lit moment touched your heart, leave a like for these two quiet souls. Miriam stood before the words in her chest could grow too brave. Come inside, I kept supper warm. Jonah rose with the letter still in his hand. At the kitchen door, he paused and looked back across the yard, as if something about the farm had shifted while he was reading his mother's words. What is it? Miriam asked. He tucked the letter carefully into his coat. Nothing, he said. But his eyes moved from the repaired barn to the lit kitchen window, and Miriam understood that nothing had begun to look very much like home. July came hot and bright, with mornings that smelled of dust, milk, and sun-warmed pine. Blue Lantern Farm settled into a rhythm neither Miriam nor Jonah had agreed upon aloud. The chestnut mare went back to Mr. Bell after 3 days, and 2 freight horses came in her place before the week was out. Jonah built a feed box from old boards, repaired a cracked water trough, and marked a place for another section of paddock fence, as if his hands had begun planning faster than his caution could stop them. Miriam wrote each boarding payment into the ledger. At first, the new column had looked bold. Now it looked necessary. Jonah never said, I told you so. That might have made things simpler. Miriam could have scolded him, and he could have smiled that almost smile, and the matter would have stayed safely about business. Instead, he only worked, and every quiet improvement made the farm feel less like something she was barely holding and more like something they were building, board by board, choice by choice. That was the dangerous part. Not his nearness, not the way he held the blue lantern when she needed both hands free, not the way his voice softened when he spoke to a nervous horse. The dangerous part was how ordinary his presence had become. One evening, after the heat had loosened its grip and the sky had gone copper beyond the pasture, Miriam found him kneeling beside the kitchen steps with a plane in his hand. She stopped on the porch. Now what have the steps done to offend you? Jonah ran his hand along the edge of the lowest board, splintering. They have splintered for years. Yes, you find that answer sufficient too often. It is generally sufficient. She folded her arms. I never asked you to fix the steps. No, nor did I agree to pay you for step repair. I know. Then why are you doing it? He looked up at her from beneath the brim of his hat. Because you come down these steps every morning in thin-soled shoes, and I am tired of pretending not to notice. The porch went very quiet. Miriam had no ready answer for that. The truth of it was small and startling. He had noticed her shoes. Not in a fanciful way, not as some man at a dance might notice ribbons or curls, but in the manner of someone who had seen a daily risk and set himself against it without announcement. She looked away toward the barn, though there was nothing there requiring her attention. That is practical. Mostly. The word touched the air between them, with more warmth than either of them could safely hold. She stepped down carefully, testing the smoothed board with the toe of her shoe. There, you have saved me from certain death by splinter. I sleep better already. You are a dramatic man, Jonah Reed. That may be the first time anyone said so. She smiled, and this time she let him see it. The days that followed brought work enough to keep them from speaking too much of things that had no plain place in the ledger. A summer storm rolled through on a Tuesday afternoon, not fierce enough to damage, but hard enough to test every repair. Jonah and Miriam stood together inside the barn while rain rattled against the roof, watching the new wall take the weather without a shiver. It holds, Miriam said. Jonah's eyes moved over the beams. It holds. She heard more in his voice than satisfaction. There was something almost tender in it, as if he took no small comfort from one thing in the world staying where he had put it. A clap of thunder cracked over the hills, and one of the boarded freight horses startled in the shed. Jonah went at once, and Miriam followed with the blue lantern, though daylight still lingered. The horse tossed its head, pulling against the tie. Jonah moved slowly, speaking low until the animal eased. Miriam held the lantern beneath the shed roof, watching rain drip silver from the eaves. You talk more to horses than people, she said. Horses listen better. I listen. He turned his head toward her. For a moment rain and thunder filled the silence. He did not answer. Then he said, Yes, you do. The words were plain, but something about them found its way under her ribs. That night, supper was late because the storm had delayed the milking. Miriam came in damp to the elbows and found Jonah already at the stove, clumsily stirring beans in a pot and looking as uncomfortable as a calf in a parlor. She stopped in the doorway. Should I ask? You were late, so you decided to attack my supper. I decided to prevent it from burning. That pot was not burning. It was considering it. She crossed the kitchen and took the spoon from him. Their hands brushed. The touch was quick, no more than skin against skin, but he stepped back as if it had been fire. Miriam pretended not to see. You may set plates, she said. I can do that without injury. I have seen you with the coffee cups. Do not promise too much. He gave her a look then, tired and warm, and she felt a happiness so simple it frightened her. A man stirring beans badly in her kitchen should not have felt like a blessing. A second plate on the table should not have felt like the whole house drawing breath. But it did. After supper, the rain stopped. The farm glistened beneath a washed-clean sky. Jonah went to check the shed doors, and Miriam followed with the blue lantern, more out of habit now than excuse. Together they latched the stalls, checked the horses, and walked back toward the house through soft mud and the smell of wet sage. At the porch, Jonah stopped. Miriam climbed one step, then turned when she realized he had not followed. He stood at the edge of the lantern glow with his hat in his hands, his hair damp at the temples, his coat dark from rain. Behind him, the barn and shed stood whole beneath the clearing sky. In front of him, the kitchen door stood open, warm light spilling across the porch boards he had smoothed for her feet. You coming in? She asked. He looked toward the kitchen, then back at the yard, as if measuring the distance between all the places he knew how to leave and the one place he no longer could. I ought to go to the tack room. It is early. I know. There is coffee left. I know that too. Miriam's hand tightened on the lantern handle. Then, why do you look like a man arguing with a judge? Jonah let out a quiet breath. He turned his hat once in his hands. Because I ought to leave before I forget how to. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. They carried every mile he had ever traveled, every coin he had counted across a stage office counter, every bedroll tied with one end ready, every good thing he had denied himself because wanting had always seemed too expensive. Miriam stood very still. She could have made it easy for him. She could have nodded, thanked him for his work, and let him walk back to the tack room with his caution intact. That would have been sensible, safe, respectable. But Blue Lantern Farm had paid twice for fear long enough. She stepped down one porch stair, the blue lantern held between them. Then forget once, Jonah, she said softly. We can see tomorrow whether it ruined us. He closed his eyes for a moment, like a man struck by kindness when he had braced for pain. Miriam, he said, and her name sounded almost like a warning. No, she whispered, do not make my name into another reason to run. That brought his eyes open. The space between them was small now. The lantern light colored his face blue and gold. Rainwater dripped from the eaves in slow beads. Somewhere in the shed, a horse shifted and settled. The whole farm seemed to wait without pushing. Jonah set his hat on the porch rail. He stepped closer, slowly enough that she could have turned away. She did not. His hand lifted, hesitated near her cheek, then settled lightly against the damp edge of her hair. He touched her as if asking a question, and Miriam answered by leaning the smallest bit toward him. The kiss was quiet. No storm broke. No music rose from the hills. It was only Jonah Reed bending his head to kiss Miriam Vale beneath the porch roof, with the blue lantern burning steady between their feet and the repaired farm standing around them like a witness. But when he drew back, something in his face had changed. The careful man was still there. The duty, the fear, the habit of leaving, yet beneath all of it stood a truth neither of them could mend, hide, or explain away. He wanted to stay. Miriam knew it, because she felt the same frightening truth inside herself. Jonah rested his forehead lightly against hers for one breath, then stepped back. I should be sorry. Are you? His mouth moved, almost a smile and almost pain. No. Then do not start lying now. You have been very proud of your honesty. That made him laugh under his breath, and the sound warmed her more than the kitchen light. They sat on the porch steps after that, side by side, close but not careless. The night cooled around them. Miriam held the lantern in her lap. Jonah's hands rested loosely between his knees, though once his finger brushed the edge of her skirt and neither of them mentioned it. I have spent years making sure nothing could pull at me hard enough to change my road, he said. And now, he looked out toward the barn, where his repairs stood pale in the moonlight. Now I am not sure the road is the honest thing anymore. Miriam swallowed. What is? He turned toward her, and the answer was in his eyes before his mouth found it. This, he said. The word was small, the choice inside it was not. When Jonah finally rose to go to the tack room, he did not move like a man escaping. He moved like one taking care not to break something new by holding it too tightly too soon. At the yard's edge, he looked back. Miriam stood on the porch with the blue lantern in her hand, its light cupped against the dark. She did not call him back. Not yet. Some things needed mourning to prove them. But she watched until he reached the tack room door. And Jonah, who had crossed half the west without turning back for any place, turned back twice before he went inside. Mourning did not ruin them. That was the first thing Miriam understood when she woke to pale light across the kitchen floor, and the memory of Jonah's kiss resting quietly beneath her ribs. The house had not fallen. The cows still needed milking. The bread still needed kneading. The world had not punished her for wanting something warm after so many cold months. Outside, Blue Lantern Farm stirred beneath a clear July sky, and somewhere beyond the barn, Jonah was already at work. She found him by the new paddock rail after breakfast, driving a post into firm ground. He looked up when she approached, and for one careful second they were strangers again, both standing on opposite sides of what had happened. Then he smiled. Not much. Jonah Reed would likely never smile like a fool in open daylight. But the look was there, small and honest, and Miriam felt her own mouth answer before pride could stop it. "I thought the paddock fence was finished," she said. "It was strayed." "That does not sound like trouble." "It could be stronger." "You have begun inventing repairs." "I have begun noticing possibilities." That word carried more than lumber. Miriam stepped closer to the rail. Possibilities are expensive. Some are. And some. He set the hammer down. Some pay back. Neither said more. The morning did not need it. For several days, they moved gently around their new understanding. Nothing improper changed, and yet everything did. Jonah still slept in the tack room. Miriam still set the table with 2 plates and told herself it was only because a working man needed food. He still came in washed and dust-marked at supper. She still asked about boards, bills, horses, weather, and hay. But now, when their hands brushed over a coffee cup, they both remembered the porch. When Miriam carried the blue lantern out at dusk, Jonah took it from her with a softness that made even the practical act feel like a promise. When he stood in the kitchen doorway to say good night, he lingered half a breath longer than before. That was enough to make leaving feel like a shadow standing nearby. By the 3rd week of July, Blue Lantern Farm had 2 boarded horses, a steady promise from Mr. Bell for overflow teams, and a wagon shed sturdy enough that men in Mercy Crossing had begun calling it Mrs. Vale's stable. Miriam corrected them at first. "It is a shed," she told Eli Mercer when he brought a cracked singletree for Jonah to repair. Eli looked around at the stalls, tack hooks, feed box, and fresh rail. "Ma'am, if that is a shed, I am the governor of New Mexico." Jonah said nothing from where he stood planing a board, but Miriam saw the corner of his mouth move. "You agree with him?" she asked. "I try not to argue with governors." Eli laughed until she threatened to charge him storage for taking up air. The small business brought coins, and the coins brought something Miriam had nearly forgotten: choice. Not much, not enough to be careless, but enough to pay the mercantile note down, enough to buy 2 sound hay rakes from a farmer moving east, enough for her to look at the ledger without feeling as though every number had been sharpened against her. Jonah seemed pleased by the progress, though he never claimed credit. If anything, the more the farm improved, the more restless he became in small, hidden ways. Miriam saw it first in his bedroll. One morning, she passed the tack room door with a basket of clean cloths and saw it tied tight at the foot of the cot again. For weeks it had loosened little by little, blankets spread, one extra shirt hung on a peg, his mother's letter tucked beside a tin cup. Now the knot was back. She told herself not to fear a knot. By afternoon, she saw him standing near the road with his hat low, watching dust rise in the distance as the westbound stage came into Mercy Crossing. The stage did not turn toward Blue Lantern. There was no reason it should. Still, Jonah watched until the dust settled. That night's supper was quieter. Miriam waited until he had eaten half his stew before she spoke. "You have been counting clouds that are not there." Jonah looked up. "Have I? And tying knots that do not need tying." His spoon stilled. She held his gaze, trying to keep her voice light and failing at it. "If something is wrong, I would rather know it before I trip over it." "There's nothing wrong." That is the answer men give when the wrong thing has a name they do not want spoken. A little weariness crossed his face. "You have a sharp way of finding a door. You stand in front of so many locked ones." He looked down at his bowl, and for a moment she thought he would tell her. Instead, he folded back into caution. "Work may call me onward sooner or later," he said. "It always does." The words struck harder than they should have, because they were not new. From the beginning, Jonah had come to Blue Lantern as temporary help. He had told her plainly that he moved where wages took him. She had known better than to pretend a repaired barn wall could chain a man to a farm. Still, knowing a truth early did not make it kinder when it came near. "I see," she said. His eyes lifted quickly, as if he heard the hurt she tried to hide. "Miriam." "No, you needn't explain. I hired you for short work. You never promised otherwise." "That is not what I meant." "What did you mean?" He opened his mouth. A knock sounded at the front door before he could answer. Miriam rose, grateful and angry at the interruption all at once. When she opened the door, Mr. Bell stood on the porch with his hat in both hands and a folded envelope pinched between two fingers. "Evening, Mrs. Vale. Beg pardon for calling late." His eyes shifted past her toward Jonah. "This came on the Santa Fe coach, marked for Mr. Reed. Looked official enough I figured it should not sit in my office till morning." The room changed. Miriam felt it before she understood it. Jonah stood slowly. "Thank you." Mr. Bell handed over the envelope, then looked between them with the awkward understanding of a man who had delivered more than paper. "No trouble. Evening to you both." When the door closed, Jonah remained standing with the envelope unopened in his hand. Miriam did not ask who it was from. She saw the answer in the return mark. Rancho de la Luna, north of Santa Fe. She had heard of it. Everyone in Mercy Crossing had. A broad horse operation with fine stock, deep pockets, and more hired men than Blue Lantern had cows. Men went there when they wanted steady wages, proper quarters, and a foreman who paid on time. Jonah turned the envelope over once. "Open it," Miriam said. He looked at her. If it came this far, it deserves reading. He broke the seal. Miriam stood near the stove, one hand on the back of a chair while Jonah read. His face gave little away, but she had come to know the small betrayals of his restraint, the tightening around his eyes, the slow lowering of the paper, the way his thumb pressed against the fold. "What is it?" she asked, though she knew enough already. He laid the letter on the table. "Rancho de la Luna needs a lead carpenter and stable manager. Their old man is retiring. They heard I was in the territory." "How?" "Eli wrote to a cousin last month asking about good lumber prices. Mentioned my name, I expect. Work travels faster than men do." "And the wage?" Jonah did not answer. Miriam reached for the letter, then stopped. "May I?" He nodded. She read the number once. Then again. Nearly double. More than double if board was included, honestly. Enough to send money to Missouri without counting every coin twice. Enough to settle Amos's apprenticeship faster. Enough to ease Ruth Reed's old farm through winter. Enough to make Blue Lantern's new stable column look small and foolish. Miriam folded the letter along its original crease and placed it back on the table. "You should be proud," she said. His face tightened. "Miriam." "No, it is good work to be offered. A man does not get a letter like that by accident." "That does not make it simple." "No," she said, and her voice softened despite herself. "It makes it worse." They stood in the kitchen with the whole future suddenly lying between them in black ink. The Blue Lantern hung on its peg near the back door, unlit. Miriam noticed it because she needed somewhere to look that was not Jonah's face. The glass seemed darker without flame, a small blue heart waiting for someone to decide whether night was worth lighting. "When would they want you?" she asked. "Within 3 weeks." 3 weeks. The same length of time it had taken the barn to stop sounding wounded. Less time than it had taken his presence to become part of every room she entered. Jonah picked up the letter and folded it once more, careful, too careful. "I have not accepted." "But you have not refused." "No." She nodded. "You would be foolish to refuse quickly." "I thought we had settled our opinion of foolishness." The attempt at warmth nearly broke her. She looked down at her hands. "That was before foolishness came with wages enough to help your family." He took one step closer, then stopped. "I don't want to leave." The words were plain. They should have comforted her. Instead, they made the ache worse. "Wanting is not the only thing in the world," she said. I know you know." That was the trouble. If Jonah had been careless, she could have resented him. If he had been selfish, she could have sent him away with her pride intact. But he was standing in her kitchen hurting because duty still had a rightful claim on him, and love had no wish to make him smaller for honoring it. He tucked the letter into his coat pocket. "I need time to think." "Then take it. You make that sound easy." "It is not." Miriam lifted her chin. "But I will not beg a man to betray the people he loves." His eyes held hers, full of gratitude and pain. Outside, the night wind moved over the yard. The repaired barn stood firm. The new stable waited with 2 horses breathing softly inside. The kitchen table, once too large for one person, had become too small for the silence now sitting across it. Jonah reached for his hat. "You need not go to the tack room yet," she said before she could stop herself. He froze. For one wild second, Miriam wished she could take the letter, burn it in the stove, and keep only the man. But that was not love. That was fear in a pretty dress. So she added quieter, "There is coffee left." Jonah looked at her with something raw and tender in his face. Then he set his hat back down. They sat at the table until the coffee cooled, not touching, not deciding, not pretending the letter had not come. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was crowded with Missouri, Santa Fe, Blue Lantern, a boy's apprenticeship, a mother's tired hands, a widow's farm, and one kiss under a porch roof that had suddenly become too precious to speak of lightly. When Jonah finally went out, Miriam did not follow with the lantern. She stayed in the kitchen after the door closed, opened the ledger, and looked at the new stable income column until the numbers blurred. For the first time since spring, Blue Lantern Farm was growing. And for the first time since winter, Miriam feared that growing might not be enough to keep what she loved. Jonah carried the Santa Fe letter for 4 days. Miriam knew because she saw the shape of it in his coat pocket whenever he bent to lift a feed sack or leaned over the stable rail to check a horse's shoe. The paper rode close to his heart, which seemed unfair to her, though she knew the letter had every right to be there. He did not speak of it. Neither did she. That was how the trouble grew. Blue Lantern Farm went on as if nothing had changed. Morning milking came early. Hay needed turning. The boarded horses needed water. The new paddock rail needed another coat of whitewash. Mr. Bell brought 2 freight horses on Tuesday and paid in advance, praising the clean stalls with a cheerfulness Miriam could not quite return. Eli Mercer rode up on Wednesday with a broken wagon tongue and told Jonah, with great satisfaction, that the stable shed had already become useful enough to make him look like a prophet. Miriam thanked him. Jonah smiled faintly. The letter remained in his pocket. On Thursday, Miriam found Jonah in the wagon shed after supper, planing the edge of a stall door that already swung true. He had worked past the point of reason. His sleeves were rolled high, and the lantern light showed weariness in the set of his shoulders. "That door opens clean," she said. "It drags." "It does not." "It might." "You are inventing faults again." His hand stopped on the plane. For a moment, only the horses breathed in the stalls. Miriam stood in the shed entrance with the blue lantern beside her, wishing she had not spoken as though this were ordinary. Nothing was ordinary with Santa Fe folded between them. Jonah set the plane aside. "I don't know how to be still with it. With the door. With wanting 2 lives at once." The honesty came so suddenly that she felt it like a hand laid gently over a bruise. She stepped inside, "Then say both lives plain." He looked toward the open yard. "There is Missouri, my mother's place, Amos's apprenticeship. Every month I send money and know, for a little while, I have done what I'm meant to do. And the other life." His eyes came back to her. "This farm, the stable, Your ledger with that new column written too hard, coffee in the morning, your blue lantern, you telling me a gate is meant to speak. The ache in her chest became almost unbearable. And me, she asked softly. Jonah did not look away. You are the reason the rest of it has a shape. Miriam's fingers tightened around the lantern handle. She wanted to cross the few steps between them. She wanted to take the letter from his coat, lay it on the workbench, and tell him that love did not need Santa Fe's permission. But she heard his mother's name in the stage office. She heard the message for Amos. She saw him counting coins with the grave care of a man who had carried other people's futures in his pocket for years. So she stayed where she was. Have you written them? She asked. Rancho de la Luna. No, your mother's. His face changed. That is not an answer, she said. No. You should. I know. Before you decide. He looked down at his hands. If I write her, she may tell me to take the higher wage. She might. And if she does, I do not know whether I will be relieved or ruined. Miriam had no answer for that. Some truths could not be repaired with a sentence. The next morning, Jonah went into town alone. Miriam watched the wagon disappear down the lane, then hated herself for how empty the yard looked after. She kept busy because busy hands were safer than waiting ones. She scrubbed milk pans until they shone. She swept the kitchen. She carried fresh straw to the stable. She opened the ledger, closed it, opened it again. At noon, she took clean sheets to the tack room. She had done so before, always with a knock, always when Jonah was away or outside. The room was plain but no longer quite temporary. His spare shirt hung from a peg. His mother's last letter sat folded beneath a tin cup. A small piece of blue ribbon, torn from the lantern wick trimming, lay near the window where he had used it to tie a packet of nails. The sight of those small roots made her breath catch. Then she saw the Santa Fe letter on the cot. It must have slipped from his coat when he changed before town, or perhaps he had set it there and forgotten it. Miriam meant only to place the sheets and leave. Truly, she did. But the letter lay open. The wage was circled twice. Beneath it, in Jonah's plain hand, he had written 3 sums. Amos printer fee. Ma winter feed. Dead at Wilkes store. At the bottom, smaller than the rest, almost as if he had hoped the pencil would fail before the words formed, he had written, Blue lantern. Miriam sat slowly on the edge of the cot. There it was, not indecision, not silence meant to wound her. Arithmetic, duty. Hope weighed against obligation until even love had become a question mark on paper. She picked up the letter carefully, folded it, and set it beside his mother, S. Her first feeling was hurt. Her second was shame for the hurt. Her third was something steadier. If Jonah could not imagine a road where Blue Lantern stood beside Missouri instead of against it, then perhaps she had been waiting for him to solve a problem that belonged to both of them. That evening, he returned with ink on his cuff, and no flour, though he had promised to buy some. You forgot the flour, Miriam said from the porch. He looked toward the wagon bed, then closed his eyes briefly. I did. Then either Mercy Crossing has run out of flour, or you wrote a hard letter. He climbed down. Both would have been easier. To your mother? Yes. And I asked what she truly needs for winter, asked about Amos's fee, asked whether the Wilkes store debt stands as high as I remember. He removed his hat. Asked what she would think of me staying in one place if that place could still send money home. Miriam's heart moved painfully. You wrote that. I did. That was brave. It felt selfish. Brave things often do when a person has been trained by duty. He looked at her with tired eyes. I found the Santa Fe letter after I came back. It had been moved. The air changed. Miriam did not deny it. I saw it when I brought sheets. You read it. It was open. That is not what I asked. No, she said, I read enough. Jonah's jaw tightened, but not with anger alone. Hurt too, embarrassment. a private struggle exposed before he had chosen the words himself. "I should not have," Miriam said. "I am sorry." He turned away, looking toward the barn. The late light caught the repaired boards, making them look almost white. "Then you saw the sums?" "Yes." "And the question?" "Yes." The silence after that was long. At last, Jonah spoke, his voice low. "I did not put your farm at the bottom because it meant least. I know. I put it there because I did not know how to count it." Miriam stepped off the porch. "I know that too." He looked at her then, and the grief in his face was not for what had happened, but for how hard he had tried to be good and still found himself hurting someone. "I should have told you," he said. "Yes. I was afraid you would hear the wage and think I had already chosen it. I was afraid of the same thing. Have I made a mess of this?" Miriam almost smiled, though her eyes stung. "You have made a very careful mess." That drew the smallest breath of laughter from him, and the sound eased the knot between them just enough. She came closer, stopping where the porch shadow met the yard. "Tell me in the comments, should Jonah take the better way or stay where his heart has finally found rest?" Jonah's brow lifted slightly. "Are you asking me or the whole county?" "The whole county may have opinions. I am asking you to stop deciding alone." His face softened. Miriam reached into her apron pocket and drew out a folded page from the ledger. She had torn it free that afternoon with hands steadier than her heart. Numbers covered it in neat columns. Stable income, dairy, hay, board rates, wagon repair estimates, feed costs, possible savings by winter. She held it out to him. "What is this?" he asked. Not an answer, not yet. He took the paper. "It is proof," she said, "that Blue Lantern is not only a feeling. It is not just warm coffee and porch kisses and a lantern we both pretend is practical. This place can grow if planned right." Jonah stared at the columns, his thumb moving over her handwriting. "I cannot match Santa Fe," she continued. "Not in wages, not now. I will not insult you by pretending otherwise." "Miriam, but I can do sums too, and I can see farther than 1 month when I am not scared half blind. You taught me that by looking at a broken shed and seeing stalls." He folded the paper with care. "What are you saying?" She drew a breath. "Tomorrow morning," she said, "you and I are going to sit at the kitchen table and write down what this farm could become if neither of us ran from the arithmetic." The evening wind moved softly between them. "And after that," he asked. "After that, you may still choose Santa Fe if it is the right thing." His hand tightened around the page. "And if it is?" Miriam looked toward the blue lantern hanging dark in the barn doorway, then back at him. "Then maybe we find out whether a man can stay for love without failing duty." Jonah stood very still. For 4 days, the Santa Fe letter had lived in his pocket like a command. Now Miriam's ledger page sat in his hand like a door. Neither of them walked through it yet. But for the first time since the offer arrived, Jonah looked at Blue Lantern Farm as if staying might not be theft from the people he loved. It might be the first honest way to carry them all. The kitchen table at Blue Lantern Farm had held grief, bills, cold coffee, seed packets, and more lonely suppers than Miriam cared to remember. That morning, it held a future. Miriam rose before dawn, though she had slept little. She baked biscuits because her hands needed something familiar to do. She set coffee to boil, sharpened 2 pencils with Ezra's old pocket knife, and laid the ledger open between 2 clean plates. Beside it, she placed the page of sums Jonah had held the night before, now smoothed flat beneath the sugar bowl so the corners would not curl. When Jonah entered, he paused at the sight of the table. "You look like a banker about to deny a loan," he said. "I look like a woman about to discuss numbers with a man who notices everything crooked except his own future." "That sounds worse." "It may be." He washed on the porch and came back with his hair damp, shirt sleeves rolled, and caution sitting square across his shoulders. The Santa Fe letter was in his coat pocket. Miriam saw the edge of it when he sat down. She did not flinch from it this time. They ate first because Miriam had decided no life-changing plan should begin on an empty stomach. After breakfast, she turned the ledger toward him. "I will start with what is true," she said. "You should hear it plain. Rancho de la Luna can pay you more than I can, much more. It can give you a fixed position, a proper stable, and enough money to help your mother and Amos faster than Blue Lantern can this year." Jonah's eyes stayed on hers. "That is a hard opening argument if you mean to keep me." "I do not mean to keep you like a thing caught in a fence." His expression softened. "I mean to make an honest offer," she continued. "One you can refuse without shame and accept without feeling bought." She opened to a fresh ledger page. "Blue Lantern has 28 milk cows. With winter feed planned right, I can keep them and add 4 more by spring. The dairy money is steady but not large. Hay sells better if we cut and store properly instead of rushing half the field when weather frightens me. The stable can board 2 horses now, 3 if we finish the extra partition. Mr. Bell will send overflow teams when his barn is full. Eli says men need wagon repair more often than they admit. You can do that work." "I can. You can also train green horses better than most men in this county." "I would not say most." "I would. You may argue when it is your ledger." That brought a faint smile to his mouth. Miriam wrote as she spoke: dairy, hay, boarding, wagon repair, horse handling. Beside each, she placed cautious amounts, never the highest hope, only what could be reasonably earned if weather did not turn cruel and if both of them worked harder than was comfortable. Jonah watched in silence. She turned the pencil in her fingers. "I cannot pay Santa Fe wages, not now, but I can pay a smaller fixed wage, room and board, and 1/3 of all stable and repair profit after costs." His gaze lifted sharply. 1/3. "Yes, that is too much. It is exactly enough." "Miriam." "No, listen before you argue. The farm is mine. The land remains mine unless marriage or law changes that someday, and we are not using romance to muddle business. The dairy remains mine because I carry that work and that debt. But the stable idea came from your eye. The repair work comes from your hands. The horse handling comes from your skill. If you build it, you own a share of what it earns." He looked down at the page as if it might shift beneath him. "And the money home?" he asked. "We make it part of the plan, not something you hide, not something that stands against us. Every month before profit is divided, we set aside a fixed amount to send to your mother for winter feed and Amos's apprenticeship. More when there is more. Never less than what you have managed these past months, unless ruin takes us all together." Jonah went very still. Miriam's voice gentled. "You have been carrying them like a debt that proves your love. I am saying we build a place where helping them is part of the foundation." He looked away toward the window. Outside, the yard had just begun to brighten. The barn wall Jonah had rebuilt caught the first clear line of sun. The wagon shed stood behind it with its new roof slanted strong and sensible. A horse thumped softly in one of the stalls, alive and impatient. "I do not know how to take that," he said. "You take it like a partner, not charity, not rescue, not a widow begging a man to stay because the house feels less empty when he sits at the table." Miriam swallowed once, then went on. "Though it does." Jonah turned back to her. She held his gaze, her courage shaking but present. "I will not pretend my heart is not in this. It is, but my head is here too. I have counted feed, lumber, board rates, repair costs, and winter risk. I have counted what I can afford to lose and what I cannot. I cannot afford to build a future on wishes. I can afford to build one on work." The words sat between them, plain and strong. Jonah took the pencil from beside the ledger and studied her columns. He changed one number lower, raised one feed cost, added nails, horseshoes, and replacement leather to the repair line. Miriam watched without speaking, feeling an unexpected warmth at the sight of him not accepting the plan blindly, but respecting it enough to make it truer. "You missed salt blocks," he said. "I did not." "You wrote feed, salt separate." She leaned closer. "You are certain?" "I am." "Then write it." He did. Their shoulders nearly touched over the ledger. For the next hour they worked the farm into numbers. Not dreams alone, not fear alone, a living plan. They argued over whether 3 stalls would crowd the shed. They argued over how much hay could be spared for boarders. They argued over whether the cracked wagon should be repaired for farm use or sold toward better lumber. Miriam wanted to sell it. Jonah wanted to repair it. "It has sentimental value," he said. "It has one wheel that leans like a drunk uncle. It could haul feed. It could collapse and kill feed. It will not collapse if fixed. Everything on this farm becomes a personal challenge to you." He glanced at her. "Not everything." The quiet in that answer made her forget the next figure. Jonah looked away first, but not before color touched the edge of his cheek. By noon, the ledger held the shape of a possibility. Not a grand one, not a rich one. A hard-working future with narrow margins and honest growth, enough to send a monthly draft to Missouri, enough to make Blue Lantern stronger by spring, enough, perhaps, for a man to stay without stealing from those who needed him. But Jonah still looked troubled. "What is it?" Miriam asked. He folded his hands on the table. "Santa Fe is certain money." "Yes. This is risk." "Yes. If weather turns poor, if horses do not come, if the dairy drops, if lumber rises, if Amos needs the fee sooner than we can send it, then we face it." "We." The single word came out rough. Miriam reached for the Blue Lantern sitting cold on the sideboard. She had brought it into the house that morning without knowing why. Now she set it on the table between them. "This lantern belonged to a life I thought had ended," she said. "For months I kept it dark because lighting it felt like admitting I might still need beauty. Then you came, and the farm needed light, and I found out something can belong to the past without being buried with it." Jonah stared at the blue glass. "I am not asking you to forget your mother," she said. "I am not asking you to stop being Amos's brother. I am asking whether you can let this farm become part of how you love them, instead of the thing that takes you away from them." His jaw tightened. For a moment, Miriam thought he might reach for her hand. He did not. Instead, he reached for the Santa Fe letter and laid it beside the ledger. 2 papers. One promised wages. The other promised work. One had an answer already printed at the bottom, waiting for his signature. The other had pencil marks from 2 people who had spent the morning learning how not to decide alone. Jonah touched the ledger page lightly. "I need to hear from Ma. I know. If she writes that the need is worse than I think, I may have to go. I know that too." His eyes lifted. "And if I stay?" Miriam's heart beat hard once. "Then we write a partnership agreement, properly. We take it to Mr. Bell or Eli Mercer to witness. We build the 3rd stall when the money allows. We send your mother her draft every month. We pay the mercantile note. We grow slow. We fight over salt blocks. We keep the ledger honest." "And us?" The question was so soft she almost missed it. Miriam's fingers rested near the lantern base. "We keep that honest too." Jonah nodded, but the emotion in his face deepened until he had to stand and turn toward the window. "I have wanted things before," he said. "Small things, a better horse, a warm coat, a week without moving on. I learned to want them briefly and let them pass." Miriam rose slowly. "This is not passing," he said. "No. That frightens me more than leaving." She came to stand beside him, close enough that their sleeves brushed. "I am frightened too," she said. "But I have been frightened alone, and I have been frightened beside you. Beside you is better." He closed his eyes. For one breath, neither moved. Then Jonah's hand found hers, not urgently, not like a man claiming, but like someone testing whether what stood in front of him was real. Miriam held on. The kitchen seemed warmer around them. The ledger lay open. The Santa Fe letter waited. The blue lantern caught the noon light and scattered it faintly across the table, turning the hard figures soft at the edges. Jonah looked down at their joined hands. "If I stay," he said, "it has to be because the plan is sound, not because I kissed you under a porch roof and lost my sense." Miriam smiled through the ache in her throat. "Jonah Reed, I would never build a business on one kiss." His mouth curved. "No. I would require at least two and a written agreement." He laughed then, quiet and surprised, and the sound filled the room like a door opening. Outside, a horse called from the stable. Work waited. Duty waited. The mail from Missouri had not yet returned with its answer. But the fear that had sat between them for days had changed shape. It was still there. Only now beside it lay a ledger page, a blue lantern, and a woman's steady promise that love did not have to ask a good man to stop being good. That afternoon, Jonah took the cracked wagon apart to see whether it could be saved. Miriam told him it was a waste of time. Jonah said it was a future feed wagon. She said it was a funeral procession for bad lumber. He said he had heard worse eulogies. By sunset, the argument had become laughter, and the laughter had become something warmer than certainty. When the blue lantern was lit that night, Miriam hung it not in the barn, not by the shed, but on the kitchen hook above the table where the two papers still lay side by side. For the first time, Santa Fe and Blue Lantern shared the same light. And Jonah Reed did not put the Santa Fe letter back in his pocket. The reply from Missouri took 9 days. In those 9 days, Jonah learned that waiting could wear a man out more thoroughly than labor. He worked because work had always steadied him. He repaired the cracked wagon even after Miriam declared it a lost cause twice before breakfast. He set new rails along the small paddock. He mended a broken harness strap for Mr. Bell, shot a restless gelding under Eli Mercer's amused eye, and rebuilt the grain bin lid after discovering mice had been holding meetings inside it. Every morning he checked the road. Every afternoon he pretended he had not. Miriam noticed, of course. Miriam noticed most things he hoped she would miss. She noticed when his hammer strokes came too hard. She noticed when he forgot coffee in his cup until it cooled. She noticed when he stood with the Santa Fe letter and the partnership figures side by side on the kitchen table, as if staring long enough might make one paper kindly vanish. She did not press him. That was its own mercy. On the 10th morning, Mr. Bell rode up before noon with mail tucked beneath his vest and dust on his round cheeks. Miriam was in the dairy room when she heard the wagon wheels and stepped outside with her sleeves rolled, her apron damp from rinsed pans. Jonah stood near the stable with a curry brush in one hand. Mr. Bell climbed down slowly, his expression too careful for casual business. "Letter for you, Reed." Jonah set the brush aside. Miriam stayed where she was. The envelope looked plain, brown paper, Missouri postmark, his mother's careful hand across the front. Jonah took it as if it were heavier than lumber. "Much obliged," he said. Mr. Bell glanced toward Miriam, then toward the stable. "No reply needed today." "Not yet." The stage agent nodded and left them with the sound of wheels fading down the lane. Jonah did not open the letter in the yard. He walked to the porch, sat on the lowest step, and held it for several long breaths. Miriam wanted to go to him. She wanted to give him privacy. She wanted to know. She wanted not to know. At last, he looked over his shoulder. "Will you sit with me?" The question nearly undid her. She crossed the yard and sat beside him, leaving no space this time for fear to sit between them. Jonah broke the seal carefully. The paper unfolded with a soft crackle. He read in silence. Miriam watched his face instead of the page. She saw the fear first, then surprise, then something that looked almost like grief loosening its grip. His mouth trembled once, but he mastered it. "What does she say?" Miriam asked gently. Jonah swallowed. "She says Amos is near wild with happiness over the printer's shop. Says he has already corrected the editor twice and may get thrown into the street before he learns humility." Miriam smiled. That sounds promising. She says the Wilkes store debt is smaller than I thought. She paid some of it with garden money and did not tell me. That sounds like a mother. It does. Jonah lowered the letter, then lifted it again as if needing to see the words twice. She says winter feed will be dear, but not ruinous. Says she has taken in sewing from the church women and has no intention of letting me send myself hollow for her sake. Miriam's hand moved to his sleeve lightly, not stopping him, only reminding him he was not reading alone. Jonah's voice roughened. She says, "My son, a man may honor his family without making a widow of his own life. If this New Mexico farm gives you honest work, steady wages, and a reason to unpack your heart, then do not mistake God's mercy for selfishness." He stopped there. For a while, neither of them spoke. The wind moved through the cottonwood leaves near the corral. In the stable, a horse stamped once and settled. The repaired wagon stood near the shed with all four wheels straight, looking, to Miriam's great annoyance, entirely useful. Jonah folded the letter, but his hand stayed around it. "She knew," he said. "Mothers often do. I never wrote much about you." Miriam's mouth curved softly. "Perhaps you wrote too much about the barn roof." A quiet laugh left him, shaky and brief. Amos added a note. "He did." Jonah unfolded the second small page. "He says if I refuse a good woman and a stable business because I am too fond of suffering, he will print a notice calling me the most stubborn fool west of Missouri." Miriam laughed before she could stop herself. Jonah looked at her then, and the laughter eased into something deeper. His mother's permission had not removed duty. It had done something better. It had placed duty back into human hands instead of leaving it as a chain around his throat. "What will you do?" Miriam asked. He looked toward the yard, toward the barn wall he had rebuilt, toward the wagon shed that was now plainly a stable no matter what Miriam chose to call it, toward the kitchen window where the blue lantern caught daylight in its glass. Then he reached into his coat and drew out the Santa Fe letter. "I have carried this like it was judgment," he said. "It was an offer." "Yes," he rose and held out his hand. "Come with me." Miriam stood. They walked together to the stable. Jonah laid the Santa Fe letter on the workbench beside a rasp, a coil of rope, and the ledger page Miriam had written. He took up a pencil and turned the paper over. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Answering. On the back. Paper is paper." She leaned against the stall rail, arms folded. "Rancho de la Luna may not admire thrift as much as I do. Then they'll survive the disappointment." He bent over the workbench and wrote slowly. Miriam did not read over his shoulder. She watched his hand instead. The same hand that had repaired her barn, steadied the lantern, wrapped itself around duty for years, and held hers in the kitchen when fear had nearly won. When he finished, he sanded the ink and handed the letter to her. She read only the final lines. "I am grateful for your confidence and the generous wage. I must decline. I have entered a partnership at Blue Lantern Farm in Mercy Crossing, where my work is needed and my future has taken root." Miriam looked up. "Entered a partnership?" she asked. "If the offer still stands." Her throat tightened. "It stands. With the salt blocks counted separate. Do not ruin this moment." His smile came slow and warm. "I wouldn't dare." She set the letter down. "Then we should write it properly." "We should. And have it witnessed." "Yes. And decide whether the cracked wagon belongs under farm equipment or stable assets." Jonah looked toward the wagon. "Stable assets. Farm equipment. It will haul feed for boarded horses. It will haul dairy cans first. Then it is a shared asset." Miriam narrowed her eyes. "You have become bold since receiving maternal permission." "I have entered a partnership. Boldness may be required." She shook her head, but happiness rose through her so suddenly she had to look away. Jonah saw it, of course he did. He stepped closer, careful even now. "Miriam." She turned back. "I am staying," he said. The words were simple, no grand flourish, no porch thunder, no dramatic vow, just a man who had spent years leaving every place before it could ask anything of his heart, finally choosing ground beneath his feet. She nodded once, then again, because speech had become difficult. "For the work," he added, "for the business, for the money I can still send home, for the life we can make honest." His voice softened. "And for you." Miriam reached for his hand. This time, there was no hesitation in how he held it. They went to Mercy, crossing that afternoon with the partnership page folded between them and Jonah's reply to Santa Fe, tucked into Miriam's ledger for safekeeping. Eli Mercer insisted on serving as witness, and made such a show of reading every line that Miriam threatened to charge him for legal services he was not qualified to provide. Mr. Bell witnessed too, mostly because the stable business involved his overflow horses, and because, as he put it, "I enjoy being present when sensible people finally admit what the whole road already knew." Jonah signed first. Miriam signed second. Eli signed with a blacksmith's heavy hand. Mr. Bell signed with a flourish large enough to offend the paper. When it was done, Miriam looked at the document and felt no smallness in it. This was not a widow surrendering her farm to a man. This was not a lonely woman mistaking gratitude for love. The land remained hers. The dairy remained hers to manage. The stable and repair business would be built between them, with clear shares, clear duties, and a fixed monthly draft to Missouri written into the first page like any other necessary cost. Jonah studied the agreement in silence. "What?" Miriam asked. He shook his head. "Never had my name on anything that was meant to grow." "Then write it better next time. We will need many pages." His eyes warmed. "Yes, ma'am." She pointed at him. "Do not start that again." "Yes, partner." The word moved through her more deeply than Darling might have. On the ride home, they stopped at the stage office. Jonah handed Mr. Bell his refusal letter for Santa Fe, then counted out the regular draft to Missouri. This time, Miriam stood beside him at the counter, not behind, not apart, beside. Mr. Bell wrote the draft, sanded the ink, and looked over his spectacles. Same message. Jonah glanced at Miriam. "No," he said. "Write this. Partnership signed, money steady. Tell Amos not to print that notice." Mr. Bell chuckled and wrote it exactly. That evening, Blue Lantern Farm seemed to know. The yard lay golden under sunset. The repaired barn caught the light. The stable horses lifted their heads as Jonah and Miriam came up the lane. The old wagon, despite Miriam's objections, stood ready near the shed with its wheels straight and its bed swept clean. After supper, Jonah carried the blue lantern to the barn and hung it from the center beam. "Why there?" Miriam asked. He adjusted the hook until the glass caught the flame evenly. "Place where the work started." "The work started at the south wall." "No," he looked at her. "It started when you lit this and stayed." Miriam had no answer that would not reveal too much, so she walked to the barn door and studied the hinge instead. Jonah came to stand beside her. "Loose?" he asked. "No." "Sticking?" "No." "Then what are you looking at?" She ran her thumb over the lower edge of the door, where the new wood met the old frame. "A place." "For what?" "For a mark." His eyes followed her hand. A quiet understanding passed between them. "Not yet," he said softly. "No," she agreed, "not yet." Some marks belonged after vows, after seasons, after the future had been spoken before witnesses greater than a blacksmith and a stage agent. Still, Jonah took out his pocket knife and made one tiny notch low near the hinge, so small a passing man would never see it. "A beginning," he said. Miriam touched the notch with her fingertip. The blue lantern burned above them, throwing gentle light over repaired boards, clean stalls, and two people who had finally found a way to stop making love and duty enemies. Outside, night gathered over Blue Lantern Farm. Inside, the first mark waited for the rest of their names. Winter came to Blue Lantern Farm with a clean white frost on the rails and smoke rising straight from the chimney every morning. By then, nobody in Mercy Crossing called the wagon shed a shed anymore except Miriam, and even she had begun doing it with a smile she could not hide. 3 stalls stood along the back wall. The cracked wagon Jonah had saved, against her strongest legal and moral objections, hauled feed twice a week and had not collapsed once. Mr. Bell sent overflow horses often enough that the stable ledger no longer looked like a hopeful experiment. Eli Mercer brought broken wheels, bent hardware, and every opinion he owned, most of them unpaid for and all of them loudly delivered. Jonah sent a draft to Missouri on the first Monday of every month. He no longer sent it alone. Miriam stood beside him at the stage office each time while Mr. Bell wrote out the amount in his careful hand. Some months, the draft was the same as before. Some months, when boarders had been steady and wagon repairs had paid well, Jonah sent more. Ruth Reed wrote back with gratitude, but never with greed. Amos wrote with ink blots, sharp wit, and growing pride in the printer's shop. One letter arrived in November with a printed notice folded inside. Apprentice printer wanted no longer. It read at the top, because Amos Reed had been formally taken on. Jonah read that line 3 times at the kitchen table, and then set the paper down as if it might break. Miriam poured coffee and said nothing until he found his voice. "He did it," Jonah said. "No," she answered softly, "you both did." He looked up at her then, and she saw the last of an old fear loosen inside him, not vanish entirely. Some fears became part of a person's grain, but loosen, enough to breathe around. By December, their partnership had become the talk of town for reasons that had less to do with profit, and more to do with the way Jonah looked at Miriam when she argued with him in public. At the mercantile, she told him 3 stalls were enough until spring. Jonah said 4 would be sensible. Miriam said sensible men did not add a 4th mouth to feed before hay numbers were settled. Jonah said he was speaking of a stall, not a mouth. Miriam said every stall invited a mouth, and if he could not tell the difference, she would take the hammer away from him. Eli Mercer, standing near the flour sacks, announced to the whole store that he had never seen 2 people more plainly bound for marriage while discussing livestock expenses. Miriam told him his horseshoes were overpriced. Jonah told him the left rear shoe on his mule was loose. Eli said that was not the point. Mr. Bell, who had entered only to buy tobacco, said the point had been visible since July. Miriam left with flour, salt, lamp oil, and a face warmer than the stove back home. Jonah said nothing until they were on the road. Then he asked, "Are they wrong?" The wagon wheels creaked over frozen ruts. Miriam kept her eyes forward, about the mule shoe. "About us." The cold air seemed suddenly too thin. She looked down at her gloved hands. This was not a porch kiss, not a ledger plan, not a business agreement witnessed by men who smiled too knowingly. This was the next door, the one that did not open by accident. "No," she said. Jonah let out a breath that looked white in the winter air. "Good. That is all you have to say. For now, Jonah Reed, if you make me wait until spring to hear the rest of that sentence, I may sell your repaired wagon." He smiled at the road. "Then I'd better speak before we reach home." But he did not speak on the road. He waited until evening because Jonah had a way of turning the smallest thing into honest ritual. He finished chores, checked the horses, sent Miriam inside when the cold sharpened. Then, after supper, he took the blue lantern from its hook above the kitchen table and lit it with steady hands. Miriam watched him from beside the stove. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Borrowing a witness." "To what?" He looked at her then, and the quiet in his face held more feeling than any grand speech could have carried. "To the rest of the sentence." He carried the lantern to the barn, and Miriam followed with her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. Snow had begun to fall, fine and soft, catching in Jonah's hair and on the dark shoulders of his coat. Inside the barn, the animals shifted in the warm, hay-scented shadows. The repaired south wall stood firm against the cold. The stable beyond held 2 horses, and one empty stall Jonah still claimed was merely practical. He hung the blue lantern from the center beam where it had burned the night they signed the partnership. Then he turned to her. "I came here meaning to earn wages and leave before anyone had cause to miss me," he said. "I thought that was the kindest way to live, send money home, fix what I could, move on before wanting made a claim." Miriam's throat tightened, but she did not interrupt. "You taught me that staying can be useful too," he continued. "That a man can love the family behind him and still build a life in front of him. You gave me work with my name on it. You gave my duty a place at your table. You gave me a home before I knew how to ask for one." Snow tapped softly against the barn roof. Jonah reached into his coat and drew out a small ring. It was not gold. It was silver, simple and plain, with a tiny blue glass chip set into it, no bigger than a raindrop. "Eli helped with the setting," Jonah said. "He charged too much and cried when he thought I wasn't looking." Miriam laughed, but the sound broke in the middle. Jonah stepped closer. "Miriam Vale, I am asking if you will marry me, not so I can rescue you, not so you can rescue me, but because I want to keep building beside you in work and in weather, in money sent and money saved, in grief remembered and joy made new." Miriam looked at the ring, then at the blue lantern, then at the man who had come to fix a broken barn, and somehow taught every silent corner of her life to hold light again. "Yes," she whispered. Jonah's eyes closed for half a breath. Then he slid the ring onto her finger with hands that were strong enough to lift beams and gentle enough to tremble. Their wedding came 3 weeks later, on a cold January afternoon when the sky shone pale and clear above Mercy Crossing. They married in the barn. Not because it was grand, but because it was true. The south wall Jonah had rebuilt stood behind them. The stalls Miriam had planned and argued into profit lined one side. Fresh pine boughs hung from the rafters. The blue lantern burned overhead, its glass bright against the winter light. Ruth Reed and Amos had made the long journey from Missouri, arriving 2 days early with travel-worn coats, red cheeks, and more love than luggage. Ruth took Miriam's hands before the ceremony. "My son writes like a man who finally sits down when he speaks," she said. Miriam smiled through sudden tears. "He still stands too much." "Then remind him, he listens to you better than he knows." Amos, tall and thin and full of printer's pride, spent the morning inspecting everything with sharp eyes. "So this is the famous roof," he said. Jonah gave him a warning look. "Do not start. I only mean that a man must admire the structure that filled 6 pages of letters, and somehow failed to mention Mrs. Vale's eyes until October." Miriam turned toward Jonah. "October." Jonah looked deeply interested in a knot on the barn post. Amos grinned. Technically, he called them steady, but we all understood. The ceremony was small. Eli Mercer stood near the front with his hat crushed in both hands. Mr. Bell dabbed at his eyes and claimed the barn dust was terrible. Ruth wept quietly. Amos tried not to and failed when Jonah's voice caught during the vows. Jonah promised faith, work, honesty, and a home where duty would never be treated as a rival to love. Miriam promised partnership, courage, patience, and a table where no burden had to sit alone. When the preacher said they were husband and wife, Jonah kissed her with all the restraint proper company required, and all the feeling that restraint could not hide. The supper afterward filled the barn with warmth. There was stew, bread, coffee, preserves, and a cake Ruth had somehow carried half across the territory wrapped like treasure. Eli told the story of how he had known from the first day that Jonah would stay, which was untrue but pleasing to him. Mr. Bell claimed he had seen it in the first bank draft. Amos promised to print wedding notices for half the county, whether anyone asked or not. Later, when the guests had gone back toward town or settled in the house, Miriam found Jonah crouched near the lower hinge of the barn door. She knew what he was doing before she saw the knife. The tiny notch he had made months before waited there in the wood. Beside it, Jonah carefully carved 2 initials. J.R., then M.V. He paused. Miriam knelt beside him, took the knife, and added one more small mark between them. Not a heart. That would have been too fancy for either of them. Just a small crossbar, simple and firm, joining the letters without making a spectacle of them. There, she said, a partnership mark. Jonah ran his thumb over the carving. Marriage mark. Both. He smiled, both then. The years did not turn easy all at once. No honest farm ever did. Winter still demanded feed. Roofs still needed watching. Cows still chose the worst hours to calve. Stable horses kicked boards loose. Ledgers still tightened some months and eased in others. But Blue Lantern Farm no longer felt like a place one woman was trying to keep from disappearing. It became a home built by 2 people who had learned the difference between burden and belonging. Jonah's drafts to Missouri continued, steadier than they had ever been in his wandering years. Amos finished his apprenticeship and sent them the first newspaper page where his own typesetting appeared. Ruth visited the next summer and declared Blue Lantern's kitchen warmer than any place her son had ever described. The stable grew slowly, 4 stalls by spring, 6 by the following year. A small wagon repair shed added near the cottonwood. The dairy herd expanded, not grandly but faithfully. Miriam's name remained on the land records. Jonah's name stood beside hers on the stable accounts. No one in Mercy Crossing doubted whose vision had turned a broken shed into business, and no one who watched Jonah work doubted whose hands had made that vision stand. One bright morning in their second spring, Miriam opened the kitchen drawer and took out the old map. It slid easily, still smooth from the repair Jonah had made the night he first learned of her hidden dream. He looked up from his coffee, going somewhere. She spread the map on the table. Santa Fe. His brows rose. That's so. I hear the streets look golden near sunset. Also, there is good bread near the plaza and too many bells. Jonah leaned back, smiling. You have reliable information. The farm can spare us 4 days. Ruth is here. Amos can mind the accounts if we write the numbers large enough. Eli owes us wagon work. Mr. Bell owes us favors. The cows will survive being milked by someone less charming than me. I do not know where we will find such a person. She gave him a look. Do not become sweet before breakfast. It will unsettle the hens. He reached across the table and touched the edge of the map. Then we go. Not someday. Not when all duties were finished, because duties never finished. They went because love had not trapped Miriam at Blue Lantern Farm. It had widened the road from it. 4 days later, they stood in Santa Fe at sunset while the walls glowed warm and the bells rang over the plaza. Jonah bought bread from the place he remembered. Miriam held it in both hands and laughed because it was too hot to break cleanly. They did not stay. They did not need to. The joy was not in leaving home behind. It was in having a home to return to. When they came back, the blue lantern was burning in the barn. Ruth had lit it before dusk. Amos had left a printed note on the kitchen table that read, "Travelers returned, cows unimpressed, supper warm." Miriam pinned it inside the ledger. That night, after the house quieted, she and Jonah walked to the barn door and touched the hidden initials near the hinge. Their mark had darkened with time, settling into the wood as if it had always belonged there. Jonah stood behind her, his hand warm at her waist. "I almost left before I knew what this place was," he said. Miriam leaned back against him. "No, you almost left before you knew what you were allowed to keep." Outside, the farm rested beneath a sky full of stars. The repaired barn stood strong. The stable horses breathed softly in their stalls. The old wagon waited for morning work. In the kitchen drawer, the map no longer felt like a secret. In Missouri, a mother slept easier, and a young printer set type with ink-stained hands. At Blue Lantern Farm, a woman who had thought life had narrowed forever stood beside a man who had once believed duty must take the whole of him. They had both been wrong. Duty did not have to take the whole of a life. Love had taught them how to carry it together. So if this quiet Western romance touched your heart, leave a like. Subscribe for more romantic Wild West stories where work, duty, and love meet on the frontier. And remember Blue Lantern Farm whenever you see a light still burning for someone coming home.